You've been trying, visualizing, saying the affirmations, setting the intentions, yet it still feels like life is on pause, as if the things you're calling in are stuck behind some invisible wall, and you don't know what you're missing. The truth is, you're not doing it wrong, you're just doing it from the wrong state, and the universe is not ignoring you. It's waiting for you to see, to truly see, not with effort, but with energy. Not with the mind alone, but with the full coherence of your presence. Because what you don't realize is, it doesn't exist until you observe it. This isn't a metaphor. It's quantum. It's literal. Just like the double slit experiment showed us, the act of observing turns probability into presence, possibility into particle, wave into form. Reality is sculpted not by what's out there, but by how you meet it. What you're available to witness, emotionally, vibrationally, becomes what shows up. You don't manifest what you want. You manifest what your nervous system is safe enough to perceive. So if your inner world is flooded with urgency, doubt, fear, that's the lens shaping the wave into form. That's the program filtering your timeline, not consciously, but from the background noise of your being. Imagine staring into a foggy mirror, trying to see your reflection clearly. No matter how hard you squint or shout, the image won't sharpen. But when you breathe, when you soften, when you wipe the mirror clean with presence, the reflection becomes clear. That's what true observation is. Not looking harder, but seeing cleaner. Because in the quantum field, it's not attention that collapses the wave. It's attuned attention, emotionally coherent, physiologically aligned, free of static, free of grasping, free of when will it come, yes, or what if it doesn't. That noise and that mental reach distorts the signal. It introduces interference, and interference makes the wave collapse. Elsewhere, on another frequency, in another timeline, one you don't want. This is why trying harder often leads to more stuckness, why visualizing from a place of pressure backfires, why obsessing over signs, tracking the hours, second-guessing every feeling, makes it worse. Because those are not acts of observation. They're acts of interference. They split your frequency. They fragment your signal. And the universe, at this loving, intelligent, infinitely responsive universe, can only meet you where you're whole. So it waits, not to punish you, not to delay you, but to protect coherence, to mirror only what your being is truly a match to hold. And coherence cannot be faked. It is felt, in your breath, in your body, in the stillness between thoughts, that sacred gap where witnessing becomes creating. Where the quantum field says yes, not to your words but to your wavelength. And so if you're wondering why it feels like nothing is moving, ask yourself, am I seeing from fear or from frequency, from lack or from love, from effort or essence? Because the universe is not a distant judge, it is an intimate mirror. And until you see with the eyes of alignment, what you seek cannot find shape, not because it isn't there, but because you are not yet able to observe it into being. There's a kind of ache that comes from waiting, a quiet, invisible tension in the chest, like you're suspended between worlds, not quite here, not yet there. You check your phone more often than you'd like to admit. You rehearse conversations that haven't happened. You search the silence for signs and a text, a call, a shift, anything to prove that reality is finally responding. But what if I told you it is responding? Not to your words, not to your rituals, but to the frequency beneath them. Because every thought you think, every breath you take, every sensation you allow or resist is a signal, a broadcast, a vibrational instruction. And the universe doesn't follow your to-do list. It follows your tuning. It listens not to what you ask, but to the state you become as you ask. Not your intention, but your embodiment of the outcome right now, in this breath. That's the paradox. You have to become the future before it arrives. You have to feel the gratitude before the result, the safety before the thing, the openness before the evidence. Not to trick the universe, but because that's what creates the coherence required to observe the outcome into existence. It's not that reality is slow, it's that you're still sending mixed signals. Imagine holding a radio dial between stations, flickering between static and song. That's what happens when your desire says yes, but your body says not yet. When your mind affirms, but your nervous system contracts. When you speak abundance but embody urgency, you become unobservable to your own manifestation, not invisible, just incoherent. And coherence is the only language the field responds to. So the real work, the only work, is to tune. to drop below the noise, to bring your frequency into congruence with the outcome already chosen, not from push, but from precision, not from hustle, but from harmony. That's when the field moves. That's when the wave collapses. That's when timelines rearrange themselves around your state. But coherence doesn't happen in the mind. It begins in the body, in the subtle opening of the heart, in the regulated breath, in the grounded presence that says, "I'm safe, I'm already it." Not because you're pretending, but because you've remembered that the version of you who has it is already living in a frequency, and that frequency is available now. You collapse time not by running toward the future, but by embodying it now so fully that time dissolves. You become the observer that creates, the witness that transforms, the tuning fork that brings the wave into form. So what if you stopped waiting for it to show up and started observing it as real from within? What if you dropped the timeline, released the how, and simply attuned to the texture of the already done? What if you let your nervous system feel the outcome, not as a fantasy but as a frequency already happening? This is how the mirror begins to move, not because you stared harder, but because you saw truer. You became the lens through which the unseen reveals itself. And suddenly the universe isn't distant. It's immediate, responsive, intimate. It always was. You were never waiting on it. It was waiting on you, to observe it clearly enough to exist. And when you start to observe from that place, not with force, but with presence, something subtle begins to shift. It's not fireworks. It's not instant thunder. It's more like the quiet settling of snow, a stillness, a clarity, a knowing that doesn't need proof. Because in that moment, you're no longer trying to convince reality. You're in communion with it. Your being has become the message, and the message is coherent. This is why embodiment is not a concept. It's a transmission. When you feel your future reality in your cells, in your breath, in your stride, you no longer chase it. You collapse into it, and the field adjusts accordingly. This isn't about pretending to feel good when you don't. It's about becoming so honest with your now, so deeply in tune with your actual sensations, emotions, and thoughts that they begin to reorganize around truth instead of trauma. You can't fake coherence, but you can create it. Through awareness, through presence, through nervous system regulation, through choosing safety over strategy. This is the real quantum shift. Not changing your circumstances, but changing the you that's witnessing them. Because when your observer changes, the observed must follow. It's like adjusting the lens of a camera. When you bring it into focus, the scene hasn't changed, but your clarity makes it visible. And what was once blurry, once not here yet, now appears right in front of you. Your desires were never out of reach, they were just out of resonance. And here's the wild part. The moment you stop needing reality to prove itself, it does. Not out of obligation, but because the interference is gone. The static clears, the frequency lands, and like a key finding its lock, the manifestation clicks into place. Not by effort, by alignment, not by managing, by magnetizing. This is why urgency is so destructive. It seems logical, but it's vibrationally chaotic. It tells the field I don't trust. And the field, being neutral, responds with more delay, more doubt, more distortion. But presence says, it's already here, I already am. And that signal draws timelines like a gravitational pull. It bends probability around your posture. So the next time you feel yourself grasping, waiting for the text, obsessing over signs, spinning in questions, pause, come back to your breath, feel your feet on the floor, let your shoulders drop. Because the fastest way to manifest is to become non-resistant to this moment, to open your body enough to observe not what's missing, but what's already arriving. Remember, you are not separate from the field, you are it. You are not outside the equation hoping to solve it. You are the variable that changes the outcome, and every time you shift from fear to frequency, from control to coherence, from performance to presence, you become the observer that makes the invisible real, not by proving, but by perceiving, not by pushing, but by tuning. And as you do, the universe responds, not because it's finally ready, but because you are. There's a moment, quiet, almost imperceptible, when the grip loosens, when your breath returns without effort, when the constant checking dissolves, and suddenly, the thing you were so desperate to manifest doesn't feel far away, not because it has arrived, but because you did. You arrived in yourself, in the version of you that no longer seeks proof to feel safe. that no longer needs the outcome to validate your worth. You arrived in coherence. This is the bridge no one talks about. The bridge between desire and materialization isn't time, it's embodiment. It's not about waiting for reality to catch up. It's about becoming the reality that the outcome can belong to. Because if your nervous system still flinches at uncertainty, if your frequency still whispers, "I need it to come to be okay," then the field cannot respond with clarity. It's still receiving a fragmented signal. So you don't change the world by fixing the world. You change the world by becoming a different observer of it, one whose perception isn't distorted by panic or performance, one whose presence is so still, so aligned, that the field finally has something stable enough to respond to. Because the quantum doesn't respond to pressure, it responds to purity, not perfection, but resonance, truth, safety. This is why emotional regulation isn't just self-care, it's quantum alignment. When you soothe your system, you sharpen your signal. When you create safety inside, you collapse timelines outside. Not because you forced anything, but because you became available to see what was always waiting. It's never been about calling it in. It's been about clearing enough to perceive what's already circling you. Think of it like tuning a telescope to find a distant star. The star is there. It has always been there. But until the lens is adjusted, until the focus is precise, it remains unseen. Not because it's absent, but because you weren't calibrated to observe it. And the second you shift, the second you steady your gaze and open your heart, that distant point of light comes into view. It was never far. You were just looking through noise. And this is the tender part, the part most people skip, the part where you don't chase. You clear the static of unworthiness, the hum of impatience, the residue of old identities that whisper, "This isn't for you." And as those layers fall away, what remains is clarity, precision, power, not loud power, quiet power, the kind that doesn't need to shout because it knows, the kind that bends reality because it's already inside it. So if you're feeling tired of waiting, maybe it's time to stop waiting, not by giving up, but by giving in, into the version of you who no longer sees separation, who doesn't need to get there because they already are, who doesn't manifest from need but from knowing. And that knowing, that's the most magnetic force in the universe, because when you truly know, not in your head, but in your field, the universe doesn't delay. It harmonizes, instantly, silently, precisely, and what you were trying to make happen simply becomes, not as a reward, but as a reflection of the one who finally remembered how to see. And maybe this is what surrender really means, not giving up, not letting go because you're tired, but releasing the interference, the resistance, the microscopic tension that says, this moment isn't enough. Surrender isn't passive, it's powerful. It's a vibrational recalibration that says, I choose coherence over control. I choose resonance over reaction. I choose to see through the eyes of alignment, even when the evidence hasn't arrived yet. Because here's the truth, the moment you stop needing to chase the thing, you become the place it lands. You stop being a seeker, and you start being a signal. And signals don't beg. They broadcast clearly, consistently, cleanly, without static, without split intention. And the universe, this quantum field that listens through vibration, hears you not louder, but clearer. This is where reality starts to bend, where time starts to soften. You might receive a text you stopped obsessing over. A door opens that wasn't even visible before. Coincidences cluster. Synchronicities appear like breadcrumbs across timelines. And it's not magic, it's mechanism. The mechanism of the observer effect woven into your embodiment. Because every time you regulate your nervous system, every time you breathe deeper instead of bracing, every time you shift from grasping to grounded, you're reprogramming the observer, and the observer is the source of collapse. You're no longer witnessing from lack. You're witnessing from wholeness, and wholeness doesn't wait. It witnesses the now as enough, and by doing so, it makes space for more. So feel into this. What if your manifestation isn't delayed? It's just unobserved. What if it's not missing, but masked by your mental noise? What if every not yet is simply a mirror, reflecting back the gap between your desire and your embodiment? You don't need to try harder. You need to tune truer, to soften, to stabilize, to become the field, not fight it. That's what changes the outcome. That's what moves the wave into particle. That's what transforms timelines, not by effort, but by essence. This is where you remember. You are the portal, You are the lens. You are the signal the universe is waiting to match. And it's not testing you. It's attuning to you. It's responding in real time to your coherence, not your calendar, your frequency, not your frustration. So the work isn't to get the thing. It's to become the one for whom the thing is natural, safe, inevitable. Not because you pushed, but because you aligned. And when you do, reality doesn't shift because you forced it. It shifts because it finally has something stable enough to reflect. And that something is you. And maybe now you can feel it, that subtle but unmistakable shift. The difference between asking and knowing, between hoping and holding, between wanting reality to change and being the change that reality reflects. This is not about becoming someone else. It's about remembering the version of you that has always been in resonance, the version you quieted to survive, the version that observes not with anxiety but with awe, because when you truly see your life through the lens of coherence, you don't just perceive what's happening, you participate in creating it. Every choice you make from presence is an instruction to the quantum. Every breath that softens instead of bracing is a signal that says, I'm ready now, not later, now. And the field, being infinite in its responsiveness, answers instantly, not always in the way your mind expects, but always in the exact way your embodiment calls for. Sometimes that means a thing arrives. Sometimes it means a door closes. Sometimes it means you're rerouted to something better, something you weren't even coherent enough to imagine before. Because manifestation isn't about control, it's about congruence. And congruence doesn't mean feeling perfect. It means feeling honest, regulated, real. It means allowing your system to become a clear channel, not through bypassing, but through integration, letting fear be felt and not followed, letting doubt rise without directing, letting emotion move without narrating a story of delay. That's how the signal sharpens. That's how timelines align. You don't attract what you're pretending to be. You attract what your field is broadcasting without effort, without mental rehearsal, without clenching, just by being the version of you that no longer waits for confirmation to believe, but believes so deeply that confirmation becomes inevitable. So let's make this practical. When the urge rises to check your phone again, pause. When your mind spirals into how much longer, breathe. When you feel the tension of I need this to work, soften. These are the micro moments where quantum shifts happen, not in rituals, but in your response to reality, in your capacity to regulate instead of react, to observe without interference. Because the universe isn't testing your patience. It's waiting for your coherence, not punishing your desire, but honoring your frequency. And frequency doesn't lie. It doesn't perform. It reveals. It magnetizes. It collapses timelines by becoming undeniable, unshakable, true. So ask yourself now, not what do I want to happen, but who am I being as I observe this moment? Am I the version that trusts, that breathes, that already belongs in the reality I've chosen? Or am I still watching life through the lens of delay? Remember, you are the observer, and the observer is the maker of worlds. It becomes clearer now, doesn't it, that what you were waiting for wasn't out there. It was in here, the internal click, the moment your state aligns so deeply with your desired reality that it no longer feels like a future thing. It feels like a now truth. And in that alignment, time bends. The how dissolves. You stop asking for proof because you are the proof. The moment you witness your life through this frequency, reality reshapes itself. Not dramatically at first, but subtly, faithfully, undeniably. You meet the right person on a random Tuesday. An opportunity lands in your inbox after months of silence. The conversation that felt stuck for weeks suddenly opens like a flower after rain. Not because the world changed, but because your signal did. That's the real magic. You don't chase the reality. You become the field it responds to. You don't command the timeline. You collapse into the one already vibrating with your truth. And that collapse, that's not destruction. That's creation. The crumbling of incoherence. The soft death of urgency. The release of all that once said not yet. And what takes its place is stillness, precision, power. The quiet kind that no longer needs to be loud. That no longer performs for outcomes. That simply knows. Because when your nervous system is aligned, when your energy is clean, when your observation is rooted in truth, not fear, the wave must collapse. Reality must respond. The quantum has no choice. It always mirrors the observer. So maybe now in this breath you can feel it, that shift from trying to transmitting, from analyzing to attuning, from managing the details to trusting the frequency. You don't need more doing, you need more remembering, more returning, to the version of you who already knows how this ends, to the essence that never needed to prove anything to deserve what's unfolding. You don't manifest through control, you manifest through coherence. And coherence doesn't live in your affirmations or your plans. It lives in your body, in your presence, in the way you walk through the world when no one is watching, in the way you treat your waiting moments, not as punishment, but as preparation, not as emptiness, but as evidence, because the clearer your field, the faster the response, not due to urgency, but due to clarity. The universe is instantaneous. It's our noise that delays. And when you silence that noise, when you stabilize your signal, when you observe without contradiction, the collapse is inevitable. So breathe deeper, stand taller, feel your timeline merging with your presence. You are no longer hoping, you are no longer reaching, you are witnessing, you are receiving, not with force but with frequency. And now you see it, don't you? You see that you were never waiting for life to happen. Life was waiting for you to see differently, to observe through the lens of embodiment, not expectation, to stop searching the sky for signs and start feeling the truth humming in your chest, that you are the portal, that your frequency is the invitation, that your coherence is the key. Everything you've been calling in, the love, the clarity, the abundance, the shift, it's not far, it's not on delay, it's in orbit, circling the vibrational coordinates of the version of you who already holds it. And every moment you drop deeper into presence, into safety, into alignment, you become more and more observable to that reality, not through force, but through frequency. And here's the thing, the quantum doesn't care what you want. It mirrors what you are. Not who you pretend to be when you're scripting or meditating or manifesting, but who you are when you open your eyes in the morning, when you answer the phone, when you speak to yourself in silence. It's the unseen moments that tell the truth, and that truth is the signal. So don't rush this, don't push for signs, don't demand proof from a field that only speaks the language of trust. Instead, attune. Attune with every breath, every choice, every response. Regulate your system like it already knows how to hold what's coming, because it does. And the more you live that way, not someday, but now, the more the field responds. Timelines untangle, resistance dissolves. Opportunities that seemed impossible walk right up to your door, not because you hunted them, but because you became the version of you who always had access. You don't manifest by forcing the future. You manifest by collapsing the distance between who you're being and what you've chosen. The only delay is the delay in embodiment, and the second that embodiment is real, the second your body and your being say yes without tension, the universe delivers. Immediately, precisely, effortlessly. Not because you earned it, but because you matched it. So take this knowing with you. Let it move through your breath, your thoughts, your posture. You are not waiting for the universe to arrive. The universe is waiting for you to observe it with enough coherence to exist. It's been there just beyond the static all along. Now you see. Now you're ready. Now it begins.